For the doggies. Hey, good morning. It's Ken at Tortoise Capital. It is Sunday morning coaching, May 3rd, 2026. So just do a quick check-in. Mike, you doing okay?
Yes, sir. I'm doing very well, thank you. As I said to Alex, we have a nice weather recently, long weekend in Poland. So basically, spending time outside with family doing barbecues. So today is the last day of our long weekend. So tomorrow back to work, but everything's fine, thank you.
Very good. Good to hear. Alex, you doing okay?
Yes, yeah, I'm doing well. I had a morning coffee with my youngest daughter who stayed overnight. So it was pleasant, very, and I have a hard stop at about 10, just like a couple of hours from now, today,
Yeah.
and I wanted to, just to have a chance. I rebuilt their spreadsheet that you gave me from
Yeah.
Excel 2 to the Google Finance, and
Yeah.
I wanted see if you can get me an explanation of one example, and then I wonder if we I want to hear your weekend report because this week was
Sure.
just as crazy as the previous
Boy,
one.
it sure was. I tell you what, man. I don't know what happened with the tech stocks. I thought there might have been whatever day it was where they suddenly just took off. I was looking to see if there was news of some kind of statement about the war or something, but there wasn't. It was just um, triggerless hysteria. So I'm thinking there may have been some disturbance in the force among the tech bros getting ready to announce something, and then and started accumulating. I don't know what it was, but it was good. Um, but I'm still waiting to figure out what the explanation was. Yeah.
Yeah, I just filled up yesterday,
Yeah.
and the price was 475. And I
Yeah.
remember, um, you know, 2007, when the price was reached $5, people started to drop their SUV leases, like a
Yeah.
flies. And there were, significantly less cars on the road and things like that. And kind of like 2008 followed from,
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah.
And we have right now, like this price of gas, and it seems like stocks are just zooming up, and I think, you know,
Well,
what,
I think what's happening is the it's that very narrow melt up. There's a lot more cash in the system now than there was in 2007 and 8. And that cash has to go somewhere. And it's the only place it's going is into the techs, the very narrow speculative techs, and energy. So yeah, the problem with that is that the big tech companies now, like call it the Magnificent Seven, are such a large part of the Nasdaq and the S&P that it gives that false sense of hey, well, the stock market is okay, yeah, but there's no breadth in it. That's very fragile. So you know the you would have expected a collapse, but it hasn't been. The index hasn't collapsed, but a lot of the stocks have. So there's still opportunities for trades in both directions. But boy, it is like walking on eggshells, if I can say it that way. Yeah, so my check in, yeah, just beautiful weather here, just absolutely gorgeous. At work for the Army, this is the end of the first half of the elective period. So we have a year long course. has basic training in cognitive thinking and strategy in the first third. That's the we give that to all Army officers of the rank of major and above. Half of those Army officers come to this school. That's the upper half, the guys who are going to command at higher echelons and become generals. The other half takes our curriculum through distance learning and then just goes about their business. The middle third is when we take the portion of the officers who are going to go specifically back to units and command, and we work on tactical and operational planning, how to organize the very complex uh, combat operations for all our units. So they're working on procedural uh, formulas for how to organize. The first third is more about critical thinking and creativity and changing their mindset from small scope direct action leadership, which is what made them successful, and trying to expand their mind to, graduate school professions, to think large, think globally. And then the middle third is when they work on, now that we've opened their head, we try to fill that full of good procedures to how to organize large scale units. And then the final third is the elective period. That's what we're in right now. And that has two sessions. Uh, the courses that I teach in the electives are the applied AI uh, techniques. So I have like 40 officers and 10 faculty that are taking those, and they're all doing independent study and independent research with very little guidance from me in order to maximize their initiative and discovery learning. And then I act as a resource and a mentor and a well, what it does though is it really exposes my brain to the quite often impressive uh, innovation and imagination these guys have. And it lets me work on a lot of different pieces of applied AI to help them. It turns out that the two things that I do to support them that are the most beneficial to them and to me are the prompts that I write. The first one is a top down prompt. It's called the Prompt Engineering Navigator 3.1X. That's my top level chief of staff that finds problems, frames problems in a certain way, and then explores solutions, and then works as a coordinator for the AI resources that the officer needs in order to solve their problem. So the top down thing is where it will first ask questions about what is the nature of the work you're trying to do, what would the characteristics of a successful answer look like. So it tries to understand kind of the input context, what's the problem, and the output context is what would you consider to be a successful achievement? How would you evaluate it? How much risk do you want to take? What form does that thing have to take? And then what it will do is design the series of prompts or agents that are needed to perform that work, including breaking it up into pieces and having quality control checkpoints along the way. And then once you explain everything to it and it does the work and it checks in with you, what it comes out with is a set of prompts that will then perform the work that you want done. So it's a prompt engineer in that sense. And what it does with the human is make sure that it understands the problem and lays out a procedure that the human can approve. It's almost like it writes a business plan that says, I understand what you want. This is how I propose to solve it. And this is how we're going to evaluate it if you agree. And then once the human approves the process, it will then, as an expert prompt writer, it will write all the detailed prompts that are needed to perform that work. The good part of that is that it makes the work transparent. Um, and by that I mean it gives you an industrial process instead of a magical answer. If you just ask the AI generically, "Hey, what should I do?" or "What's this?" It'll give you an answer based on probabilities. And every time you ask that same question, it may give you a different answer because each time it has to go through an unsupervised process to do things. Here's the example: an executive summary. An executive summary is when you have a smart guy read something and digest it down to the essential ideas. We do that all the time with staff work for busy commanders. We digest enormous amounts of data and render it down to just the important things to shape a decision. So if you ask a generic AI to give me an executive summary of an essay, it'll first go into its training base and try to figure out what an executive summary is. And there may be 50 or 100 different definitions that are in its training base. You don't know that because you can't see it. There's a trillion items in there. So it picks one and says an executive summary is this. And then it'll check to see, well, how do I do that? How do I summarize text? How do I pick out the most important things? How do I communicate that? Uh, what are the measures of effectiveness or something like that? So it'll, what it's doing is essentially rolling the dice and picking the next word that probably follows most of the time. So you end up getting a unique executive summary when you're done. If you then say, all right, clear your memory, and then give it the same instructions, the same document, it will produce an executive summary, but it'll be different than the original one. And it's justifiable. And because it's well trained and has a powerful reasoning engine, the answer that it gives you will be complete, persuasive, and confident. And you'll be convinced that, yeah, that's pretty good. And if you read the essay and you tried to summarize it yourself, you would recognize that the executive summary that it produced is pretty good. The problem is that it's different each time. So it's not repeatable, it's not verifiable, it's essentially magical or probabilistic. So I can't run a railroad, I can't run an army, I can't run a trading process on something that is that variable unless I protect by putting guardrails. So I can't get all the value out of it, and I'm never really sure about what it does. So instead of that, what I need is a cognitive analytical report, a car that's made by an industrial process. I need to be able to open up the black box to see what it's doing. I need the process that it follows to make the report professional, auditable, transparent, accountable, so I can follow, see where. verifiable, repeatable, and calibrated, so that each time I give it that instruction in the essay, it produces the same report on all the major points. Now, when I can do that, when I can get two identical products from the same prompt in the same context, now what I have is it's no longer a black box. I can see how it's producing that, and it's producing it to a standard that I specify. I can tell it, follow these 8 steps, look for these 9 kinds of things, use this criteria to judge, summarize with action steps that are risk managed and prioritized according to the best payoff for the least risk. So, what I've done is I've created guardrails and constraints and chosen detailed procedures. Now, I can use an AI to help me come up with that initial definition. But when I do, then I can lock that in. Now, instead of it wondering what the thing is going to do, I can actually watch it do what it's supposed to do. And I can decide which points in the process I can have it stop so I can check for quality. So the Prompt Engineering Navigator 3.1 X-ray, which is, I updated probably 6 days ago, is now the top-down chief of staff that is very helpful to these officers because they have an idea what they want to do, and then it will turn that into a professional process that they can trust. When I did that, what I learned was really important is a way of thinking with the AI and about the world, and it uses the acronym COIN, COIN. So what you want is to use the COIN lens when you're working on cognitive things, conceptual things. So the C stands for context. What's the environment like? What it matters in the local environment, what we call the area of interest. What's the observation that you make? Specifically detailed description of what's going on, not trying to make sense of it yet, but just trying to make sure that you are seeing what is happening and describing it carefully. That's what we use indicators for. So context, observation, then the I stands for insight. Now that I understand what's going on in the environment that it's in, why is that happening? And what does it mean? And what could it allow? What does it suggest? The insight is the leap forward into the future, the so what. And then the N is next steps. And that connects an action to the so what. Like there's a joke in psychology that an insight is a gift from a psychiatrist to himself. He listens to what you're doing, and all that. And they says, aha, this explains it. And then they stop because what they were trying to achieve was a moment of insight, a moment of understanding, and then they stop thinking. Well, in my world, we have to do something with the knowledge that we just created. So the N leads to next steps. And by next steps, I mean, what are all of the possible ways forward out of this I'm being stuck. Either my wheels are spinning or it's too heavy to move. I'm stuck. And I need to generate momentum in order to be able to steer towards a moving target and then get better and better as I go. So the next steps is the practical action and or set of possible actions from which I can decide what to do. So if you use that coin lens, you essentially have a table, a workspace, and you bring your understanding, and the AI brings its understanding, and together you work to improve each one of those four categories. Now, sometimes, well, I should say every time, I know something already about each one of those four categories. I understand something about the context. I've noticed some things, observation. I have drawn some tentative conclusions, insights, and then I have some ideas about what to do next, but I have incomplete knowledge. It's like in the old movies when they take a coin and they cut it into two and they give one half of the coin to each of the twins, and then they they go hide them away from the evil wizard, and then someday they meet and then each has a coin, half of a coin, and it fits, and now they're complete, and now they can go win. It's like you and the AI are trying to do that. You're trying to merge your understanding in some way that's powerful. So sometimes when I'm working with the I know a lot about the context, but I don't know what to observe at all. There's all this stuff moving around. Like, hey, I've got 50 indicators and I understand individually what they're doing, but I don't know which one to watch. So if I know a lot of context, I could ask the AI to help me decide what to observe. How do I focus? But if I know what I'm looking at, I'm fixated on this thing, but I don't know the context, I could then say, hey, what else do I need to know about the market in order to make sense of this thing that I've been concentrating on? What are the additional pieces of information? So it can fill in the thing that I don't know. I can understand the context and the observation, but not have the insight for the causal explanation of what's going on. So I could say, hey, given the context and these observations, what are the emerging themes or the important leverage points? What are the insights that I could draw from this rich collection of information? How do I find the wisdom among the knowledge? So it can help making those connections because it can combine things so much. It can find the patterns from its knowledge base that you don't have. And then, as a next step, it can generate different reasonable courses of action that could be evaluated for reward versus risk, cost versus benefit, time versus resources, scope in a logical fashion to minimize. That's where it helps get unstuck because it can take you to a small enough next step that if you take it and are successful can lead to more and more chains of action that allow you to get that train moving and to start making progress. So it turns out that the coin mindset is a very flexible way to think about how to organize your work with the AI so that you're doing what you should do and it does what it can do. And together you have created a combined large language model. So you can think of your brain as a large language model, comma, biological. You have a biological large language model in your head consisting of a non-linear 3 or 4 dimensional concept map of how the world works and the relationship between things that has encoded all of your experience, education, reflection, memory, your biology of what you inherited from your parents, and the culture that you grew up in. All of that is encoded in your head in a model of the universe with words that is the basis for your subconscious self talk and the voices in your head that are making suggestions. It's the rich language model that reacts to triggers from the world. You read something, a piece of poetry or music or somebody's phrase, and it triggers. It's making a connection to your internal word web, your large language model, and then we proceed. And that's been trained, by a million years of evolution and the your life experience into a unique large language model biological. Now, the AI that you're working with is a large language model digital, and it's been trained on trillions of words and papers and digested into a uh, word knowledge graph that it uses to take your words and then starts looking for uh, resonance inside its training set, and then will give you an answer that is probabilistic based on the context that you gave it. So, what we're trying to do is create a large language model combined biology and digital, such that the partnership between you and the AI is the is better than either one individually. To do that, you have to have a clear understanding of how you think and how it thinks. And as you work with it and you gain clarity, you gain proficiency and capability. With the following footnote: the better you get at tuning the AI to the way your brain works, the more vulnerable you are to being captured by the closed room that is the combination of your brain and the AI. So we think of that as cognitive capture. It has become so good in the local area of what you've been working on that it misses things that are outside of the union of you and your AI. So the way to protect against that danger is to triangulate with trusted others, other biological large language models, looking for verification and insight, and or choosing an independent AI that is also competent, but which is organized on a different data set and has different algorithms, and use it as an independent auditor of what you and your primary AI came up with. We think of that as the governance. I use a two-part AI model where I work as the executive with my legislator to work on the specific issue and come up with a conclusion. And then I bring in an independent AI to act as my Supreme Court to evaluate from the outside the quality of the reasoning and the process and the output, but it uses an independent lens. It was not captured by the context window and the chat thread. It's an independent agent that uses its own out of sample training set to ensure that what I did was coherent and consistent and is aligned with what I said my purpose and values are. So it acts as a Supreme Court to check on the constitutionality, if I will, of what it was that I did. What that does is gives me ways to inspect the way I was working. And what I do is I rotate the AIs at different times to get fresh approaches to the same problems, or I'll play ping pong. If it's important enough, I will have two battling AIs to work on the solution and then use a third AI as the evaluator. In the same way that when you back test a system, you have to hold out data for testing that was not used in the training in order to have a genuine validation check to see how this thing might perform in a world that it didn't have insight into. So you have to bring that same sense of back testing that we get from the financial world. into the uh, cognitive world of the AI. That's a case where the tail was wagging the dog. That lessons that we learned that were powerful for trading turn out to be powerful for trying to make sense of a complicated world outside of finance. So it's a two-way street. So that's the top-down thing that I learned in this elective period. That is that the Penn 3.1x, the prompt engineering navigator, is a powerful tool for approaching the world and organizing a work practice. The second thing that I learned that was really powerful, created, uh, refined earlier this week, is the gold recovery system. And it's a bottoms up approach. And the best way to explain it is to say it's like gold mining. So I think I know where to find gold. So I go and sample and I find that there's gold there. And there's enough gold in the samples to justify setting up a wash plant where I'm going to get tons and tons of dirt, run it down a slide that is shaking and has water spraying on it and is running over the top of a carpet that is going to collect the pieces of gold that get shaken out and washed out of the stream of watery mud and rocks that are flowing down the plant. And the idea is that the gold is so much heavier than individual rocks that if I loosen it up from the rocks or crush the rocks and then put water and shake on it, the gold is going to fall to the bottom, get caught in the carpet, and the water and the rocks are going to flow. The success of that has to do with the angle of the of the of the chute, the speed of the water, and how well you're crushing the rocks and all that stuff. So when you get done with that, you pull out the carpets and you collect their gold. You say, I'm collecting gold. But the question you should ask is, how much of the gold that was in the rocks is captured on the first pass? How much gold didn't get caught in the carpet and flowed out the end of the wash rack, the wash plant, and into the tailings? The tailings is the slurry that's left at the end of the wash rack where all the mud and the rocks and the water is left. So what you do is you go down and scoop up buckets of that, and then you run that through a fine gold extractor, which is a small wash plant, but it is careful about finding all of the little pieces of gold flakes. Now you can't run that process on these mountains of gold because it won't fit, but you can inspect the tailings in that way and discover how much gold is escaping your first pass. So that's exactly what happens when you work with AI a lot when you're researching. I'll start trying to work on a project. I iterate, I improve, we do a lot of things, and it will ask me, well, do you want to go left or go right at this point? I want to go left. And do you want to use this structure or that structure? And I'm making choices. And what I'm doing is I'm exploring a path of reasoning. But for every path that I take, there's 100 paths that I didn't take, that I started but then didn't go down. And I'm interested in finding all of the other things that were in there and not just the answer that I was satisfied with. We call that the area of interest. The area of operations is the thing that I did, and I came up with an artifact that I am happy with. But I'm interested in what else was there. It's like you're a hunter and you're tracking a rabbit through the snow. And if all you do is just look at his little footprints, then you find the rabbit, mission accomplished. But what you want to do is periodically look to the left and to the right and see what else is going on. And you say, oh, hey, there's 15 rabbit tracks going that way, but I'm going this way to chase one rabbit. If I don't stop and look around, I don't notice that there's a bunch more rabbits over there, and maybe I can get them instead of just the one that I'm chasing. So I need to use that information, but I have to seek that information off of the trail that I just took. Or I might look to the left and notice that there's a footprint in the snow of a large cat that seems to weigh about 300 pounds based on the size of the footprint and the depth of compression. I might want to know that there's a tiger on the trail, and I wonder if he's stalking me. That's information that I can use. So, in that spirit, what I do is created this thing called the gold recovery prompt. And what it does is takes large pieces of text. It could be an essay, it could be a conversation, it could be a coaching session like this that we recorded, and we're listening for the answers to the specific problems that we're experiencing or opportunities we're exploring. And we stay focused on that. But there may be some other things that we say that are interesting, but that we didn't notice. So the gold recovery system takes 4 passes through a large body of text, and it looks for all of the artifact quality items that are ready to be used, whether we noticed it or not. Like if I'm trying to make an artifact, I might have made 5 other artifacts and didn't notice it on the way to making the 6th artifact. So an artifact is something that is good enough to share. It stands alone. It's repeatable. It's quality. It can be reused. It's a tool. So the first thing it does is it looks for all the artifacts that are ready to go, whether I noticed it or not. And then it looks for all of the open issues that were not resolved or possibilities that were suggested that were not followed up. It looks for hidden potentials that we didn't even notice and chose not to follow. But no, here was an opportunity that none of you even saw. Or here's how to connect 4 or 5 different things into one concept that is that seems to be worth exploring. And it labels all of those. And then the next pass, it starts connecting them to create a knowledge graph that represents the entire block of text. And then it looks at possible next steps. Oh, it uses the coin. And when you're done with that, what you have is a cognitive analytical report that has extracted all of the gold from that block of words. And then you can bring that to your knowledge base, and it's already tagged. And now you can see how it connects to all of the other things that are existing in your knowledge base. And it might add value to 10 or 15 different things. What you have there is an industrial process that is creating your knowledge base and allowing you to see all of the things that are going on and not just the rabbit that you were chasing. So those 2 prompts were things that I built in the last couple of weeks to the current excellent level. I've been sort of working on them for the last 3 years, but this last week I got them to a much higher level. And then using the gold mining recovery thing, I built a new project last night, which is called the Knowledge Base Evaluator. So if I can do, now this is interesting, if I can take a piece of text and find all the gold in it and create the knowledge structure in order to add it to my knowledge base, how about I do an audit of the knowledge base itself? And I say, look, for the last couple of years, I have been assembling this knowledge base transaction by transaction. I now want you to give me a comprehensive review of what it is that I've assembled. I was trying to create a knowledge base to help me manage risk. What what have I accumulated now? Give me an analytical report of all the concepts, the relative weighting, the balance, what is the distribution of ideas? How many different points of view are there? How much time is it, when did it, what's the earliest entry, the latest entry? Give me all of these dimensional insights into the quality of the reasoning base that I'm using as my mirror to explore my ideas. Is it really what I thought it was? Or just show me the anatomy and the geometry and the architecture of that knowledge base. So I have about a 20-page audit process now that I built yesterday that's going to allow me to go into uh, the many notebooks that I've created to support. Now, I love what Five Frames does for me and the Trail Boss body of knowledge, but I now am going to go audit and x-ray the inside of my brain to see what it says about what I've collected. I might be top heavy or leaning to one side too much. So that was a pretty good idea. I then said, hey, imagine now that I have this auditable process, how to perform a knowledge audit. How about if I use that as a guide to design and create the next knowledge base that I'm going to make so that I start filling that up in a way that at the end of it, I can pass that audit. So I'm going to try to figure out how to design a knowledge base that would pass that audit so that when I am conducting my series of systematic research projects, each one of those is intended to fill up a part of that improved architecture of knowledge. So I can break the knowledge blueprint into smaller pieces and then put foundations and barriers and sections, and instead of just dumping everything I could find in there and then ask the AI to just, well, you sort it out. So I'm working on this project now, knowledge graph and RAG, the knowledge base, by design. And then now what I have, I don't even actually have to choose one or the other because what have I just created? I've just created a combination of inductive reasoning, bottoms up, accumulated over time, iterated learning lessons. That's an intuitive, inductive, bottoms up knowledge base. The other one is an informed, deductive knowledge base that started with the principles of what a good knowledge base should have, derived a procedure to fill it up properly. And at the end of it, I have something like the scientific method or the top down deductive knowledge base. So now, me walking through the world, I'm trying to decide who should I listen to? The practitioner that has survived, the inductive, or should I talk to the theoretical scientist, the deductive? Well, I'm walking in the middle path that I need to be informed by both theory and practice. Well, I'll just talk to both of them. And I have my own biological knowledge base. And now I have two separately trained knowledge bases. And I can use that now as a way to triangulate and not get captured by um, the typical use between my human brain and the AI brain. And furthermore, I can use a separate AI that is watching my brain, the induction and the deduction to validate, verify independently. That is my current approach to managing the opportunity of AI assisted reasoning. It is world class. And I know that because I had Google do a deep search into the literature to see if anybody else is saying that, and nobody else is saying that in public. So that's my next book. And That's what happens when I put myself in a position to supervise independent studies about applied AI with officers who are willing to follow their curiosity and explore a complicated world and learn to use AI as they do it. Because what I have them do is come back with their project report that includes a summary statement of here's what I started to do, here's what I planned, here's what I did, here's what resulted, and here's what I would do differently if I were to start over. And then they give me the artifacts that they created along the way. But the second thing that they give me is the complete package of all of their prompts and responses in one giant text file. Could be 50 or 60 pages. And I take that and I run that through the gold recovery system. And from that, we're able to find all of the other things that they uncovered and didn't realize it when they were out there shoveling away trying to find the gold they were looking for. The output of the gold recovery system is so powerful that I'm connecting all of the individual projects into one giant project of 2,000 pages to now start looking for the connections in between their individuals. Now, if you think about that and the power that that is, let me tell you how powerful that is in the real goddamn world. One of my students 25 years ago is now the commanding general of all Army logistics operations and doctrine. And he sent me a note on Monday which said, "Hey, Ken, I'd like you to take a look at this video that describes our future doctrine for providing logistics support in battle in a world that is now being dominated by sensors and robots and drones. It's changing the nature and characteristic of war." He says, "This is our current ideas. Take a look at that." Well, I had just created an AI simulation model to help an officer with her master's degree that created a global and tactical simulation of exactly that problem so that we could study some of her ideas. And we could turn it into a tabletop training game to teach people how to think about that in the classroom. That works at the tactical level where I'm trying to get fuel to a tank, or at the strategic level where I'm trying to send civilian equipment to a military assembly plant to create the project that I'm going to ship overseas. So it works because it turns out to be a fractal problem. The logic that you use to solve the strategic problem is the same logic as the tactical problem and vice versa. So you can chain together an entire, wait for it, Markov model to solve that whole problem and test different ideas. And so I ran their video with the gold mining recovery process through the model and came back 20 minutes later with a 15-page set of insights uh, that I sent him in a research report. Now, what I did was I watched his video first, and then I started making my notes on things that I quickly noticed were tensions or friction or interesting issues, and just started itemizing those as I saw them. Because my brain of 47 years of experience at doing this is the context, because I don't forget anything, I think. I can't remember the last thing that I forgot, I say with much confidence. There's important implications to that. I can't remember the last time I forgot something. See what I mean? Well, then I was doing was simply observing and reporting, not trying to create insight yet, just say, got to talk about this, got to talk about this, got to analyze that. That's a trade off. This is a risk. This is a false assumption. This is unproven. This is evidence. So I got a list of about 30 or 40 things. And then I took all of that and dumped it into the brain and the model. And then I sent him a 15-page report. And he sent me a note back and said, this is absolutely amazing. We didn't see most of this stuff. But now that you brought it to our attention, it's clear. And we're going to incorporate that into the update to the doctrine that we're going to develop that's going to design how the Army is going to fight and provide logistics. That's terrifying in some ways. Uh, and I shared with him her master's thesis, and I told her, "Hey, your master's thesis is really relevant because it's helping the Army." That's not even the only thing I did this week. We also analyzed the medevac casualty evacuation process as a reverse supply chain, which is part of that same thing I just built, but to figure out how AI can help us improve the quality and timeliness of medical support to wounded soldiers, and shared that with the Army's nursing corps and had a presentation on the use of AI for that for an hour with 200 nurses in the ranks of captain to colonel, including the Army proponent for nursing, in a 1 hour presentation about how to start thinking about using AI professionally. And so I told him about the thing that I did with the logistics chain, and I shared with him the thing that I did with the medical evacuation chain. And then because they're nurses, I told him what I did with my brother, who is a 20-year hospice nurse who just got promoted into a position where he has to create curriculum in order to teach hospice nurses and end of life nurses how to provide emotionally resilient and therapeutic support to people who are terminal and their families and to each other and to themselves so that they don't burn out from that excruciating, difficult challenge. So he and I built a knowledge base that covers all of the 10,000 papers that have been written on that subject in the last 10 years, plus about 100 hours of his testimony of what it was like doing that for the last 20 years. And then along the way, one of the papers we found was from a professor at some college on the East Coast. And she produced some award winning research this year where she created a rubric and an evaluation model that would study nursing performance in the classroom with the simulator and then provide feedback that included not just the knowledge base and expert testimony, but it would solicit and incorporate the insights from the student doing the work and the small group that she was doing it with, because these are people that have experience in nursing, and their insights are an important part of the feedback of their own performance because it helps them create a coaching eye about their own performance. They're not waiting to be told by an expert how they did, but they are trusting and training their brains to compare their performance against a published standard and then try to use creativity and critical thinking to get better. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like what we're trying to do with trading. It's the same problem. So I connected that professor to my brother's work and I said, hey, look, this is me. I'm some monkey out in Kansas, but this is what we're doing to try to create a simulation based training program for end of life counseling. Her model was built on therapeutic nursing, in which they were trying to pick the particular medical procedure to apply for whatever the sickness was. Where she is now working to adapt her model to incorporate emotional resilience training for nurses with my brother for that hospital. And we're going to publish a book on how to do that and help improve the world. Those three things happened this week. So when I say that the Penn 3.1 X-ray top-down chief of staff model is worth using, that's why I say that. And why the bottoms up gold mining recovery process is worth doing, that's why I say that. And that's what, and when I say that you should practice with AI and follow your curiosity, but document your work and save all the receipts so that we can run a process on it, that's why I say that. Because this is opening up a brave new world about how to effectively use AI as a human going forward on mission critical issues. So I'm going to share with you that AI 101 presentation I made to the uh, Army Nursing Corps. I was a guest visitor in the data literacy elective for a friend of mine, and I gave that pitch with those slides to all those officers who are studying quantitative methods like how to create a Markov model to improve decision making. And so I've exposed them to the AI mind virus. And I already had a guy at the end of the hour who had been doing some work as I was talking. And he showed me, and he's well along the way to solving an important challenge that he has been working on all year, but didn't know how to proceed. So I'm going to send you those slides, but as soon as I get the video from my buddy who recorded, I gave that presentation twice, and we're going to do a consolidated video, and we're going to attach that to the slides, and that's going to become the baseline of AI operations for all Army officers for the next academic year, plus all of the faculty that are teaching those 1,000 officers. And out of that group of 1,000 officers is all our future battalion commanders and general officers. So I'm getting a chance to intervene in the formative years as they begin to think about life as an adult. So I didn't mean to say all that, but I felt like I needed to so that you would see the power of the prompts that I'm going to send you and the way of thinking about it in a strategic way to continue the work that we're doing together. Um, in many ways, Alex, I was thinking about that as I almost anticipated that with the project you're working on, which is that trade index analyzer, because that's exactly what that process does. Is it takes a look at the trade you made, and then it looks to fill in all of the context in the 2T time frame to see what else was available while you had this signal and you were doing that trade and following these rules. What were all of the other pathways that were available? And now we can compare to see what did we get versus what was available. And then that gives us ways to improve the rule sets that were good enough to try. And now what we're doing is we're looking in the immediate vicinity of that to detect if there was better things to do. So that's my work in progress this week and my little check-in. Now, if I was a smug SOB, I said, now beat that. But what happens is the act of going through these coaching sessions continuously and then analyzing them is that's where a lot of good ideas are being surfaced and and connections being made at the somatic level, at the body level, at the subconscious level that now can be raised to the surface. So that's what that is like. Anyway, uh, uh, Hamad, we had the check-ins from the gang. Why don't you give us a quick check-in and uh, Is this your normal set? Didn't we talk last week? Did you come in special for this one?
No, I was working on my Markov model and decided instead of listening to music, I'd rather listen to you.
Yeah, well, that's
So I just kind of logged in to say hi and just kind of
yeah, just chilling.
silently ride along.
Yeah,
You got right,
yeah,
join the journey.
yeah. You still got a lot of work from last week that we're doing. So
I'll
I
be-
just want to let you know
I'll-
that that Markov model, that discussion of the Markov model, helped me build the AI model that I used for that for the gal's master's thesis. Um, that was really really powerful. The images that came out of that, I had the AI describe or create some imagery out of the work that we had done. Those are being used at the Department of the Army about contested logistics. They are absolutely astonishingly beautiful because we did it in Gemini, which is the Nano Banana Pro 2. So I just, yeah, there's a lot of good things coming to market right now. The season for discovery is upon us. So,
yeah,
all right,
yeah. On my side, I've just been working. I spent the entire most of last week working on the Markov model, equity futures. I kind of put it on paper until I want to say Thursday because there was a very clear breakout on Wednesday night, and that was like, oh, okay, something's different about the market. So I got in on Thursday, made an hour. Amazing. I sent you my progress report. So just a brief about last month.
yeah,
Equity futures, I mean, didn't do too well. Was okay because it traded most of the month on one lot.
yeah,
So I didn't really get hurt despite increasing my position size. Um, FX did a lot of hard work, and equity swing did a lot of hard work in terms of kind of lifting the portfolio up.
yeah.
It seems to me, but it seems to me that the swing trading is back on.
I think it is. I
Yeah.
really do. I think about 2 weeks ago, the train had come into the station after an enormous run. And then there was that 10 days of sideways, just
Yep.
nothing.
Hmm.
And the size of the daily range was small. So not only were there not new swing trades starting, there was not an increase of daily volatility to reward the intraday. So it was
Yes.
almost the case of everybody, hey, everybody just stop and take a deep breath.
Hmm.
And then this week, swing trades started again.
Yeah.
And it was the tech leaders, the story stocks.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember which day it was, but we mentioned it earlier. Freaking Google was up 9%,
7. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then
Cat was up
GG
10%. What the hell?
and then GGLL, which is what I invest in, was up 20% that day. And it was like, man, I'm glad that's a core position of mine.
Mm,
Holy smokes.
mm.
Because I think I've been saying and Caterpillar had an enormous day too. So the two
Yeah.
things that my no brainers right now is Caterpillar and Google,
Yeah.
for the physical world and then for the knowledge world. And I've
I
got
did.
core positions that'll never be sold. Yeah, go ahead.
So I loaded up again on IO&Q on the breakout.
Yeah,
So I had an initial position where I reinvested my profits, and then I got in again. I kind of used some of the profits I made on trading MYM and reinvested in DIA on a swing position.
yeah, yeah. I think
So
that's
made
sharp.
about $500. I reinvested $100 stop loss sort of a thing.
Yeah,
And then added the position. Took a swing position in FXI. I had like a daily swing, so I took a 2 hour swing as well in China.
yeah. Here's what I think. Here's how I think about DIA as a swing trader, position trader, long-term trader. I look at DIA as the great big cargo trailer of the broad market, because it is every one of those companies is so large. There is a thick skin of volatility protection against it. That because they're so big, they have to be owned. That every short term surprising sell off instantly attracts very large buyers of value who have to own it anyway and now have a chance to buy Apple, Microsoft, or somebody on 5 or 10% sale, they
Mm.
can't they cannot afford to not buy it, hoping that it goes to 20% sell off, because they know that it's harder and harder for it to lose the next 10% than the first 10%. So that's why they start buying it at 10%. So there's a certain degree of insurance and resiliency built into the Dow that's not necessarily built in to the Qs.
Yeah.
Like the five top stocks in the Qs, because it is a volume weighted and capitalization weighted model. Those very large five move that thing around a lot.
Hmm.
The Dow is simply the additive prices of the 30 components. It is not market cap weighted. It is not volume informed. It is pure price. So the 30 members of the Dow each have more contribution to the stability of the Dow than the 100 companies of the NASDAQ have with respect to the NASDAQ. The five elephants of the NASDAQ are all out of proportion in terms of importance. Now, it turns out that those five are also in the Dow, but in the Dow, their influence is diluted by the other 25. So, in general, if we say that the elephants of the NASDAQ and the largest 10 of the S&P 500 are responsible for sort of the direction and the feeling of stocks in general, the Dow is going to be a slower, more calibrated directional indicator, slower to change with less volatility, but still on the target, whereas the NASDAQ is going to be jumpier. And then the relationship of those two to the S&P 500 is similar, but the Dow is the least volatile, but the most directional, could. And then the Russell 2000 is influenced by that direction, but it's 2,000 small caps, and there is the lack of, there's not five companies in the small caps that are pushing. So it turns out that the Russell is the psychological response of Russell traders to the directionality of the broader market defined by the large caps. So the connection between those two is a psychological relationship, not a direct mathematical relationship in the way that the Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq are. So that's why the Russell is the least correlated to the S&P of those US indexes, and it has the most volatility by far. It's twice the volatility or so of the Nasdaq. The mid caps, which I don't really strictly follow, turns out to be a really nice intermediate play. And if you look back 20 years, the best reward to risk adjusted US index to have bought and held was the Russell 400 mid caps, MDY.
Mm.
I should have said that sooner. I should have said that 20 years ago. So that has a leverage product on it too, by the way. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
that's double secret probation right there. Now, this is the same logic that we can use now as we look at the 10 elements of the world market model for ETF2, because there are four US indexes in there, plus the US real estate. And then there are five global indexes: Asia less Japan, the European 350, the Euro Asia blend of large caps, emerging markets, and then Latin America. So the same logic will now allow us to compare the deep level psychology and economic performance of the elephants on parade. That will help us decide overall risk exposure to global equity. How much should even be on the table? And what is, more importantly, what is the trend? Is it getting better or is it getting worse? If you extend that out to the ETF2 system that looks at the top 200 approximately, 187 most liquid ETFs, that gives us deep insights into the underlying architecture that's holding up the larger architecture. And that's why I say, uh, all of the, I'll say all, most of the swing trade ideas that I see the daily report triggering and the weekend report triggering and coming from all of the different lenses, I can see every one of those expressed in that ETF2 report. And that has, at the top of that report, we're going to see in a minute, those 8 different strategies comparing strength, the fast, and the um, consistency, which is the slow 10-week weighted moving average. That's everything. Because you can see the changing of when the consistency is the context, when that's white, it's above average, generally speaking. That's all you kind of really need to know. But when the strength goes into green, you now know that something that was above average has become a leader. Ah, and it just became a leader. There was a reason why long term that thing was above average. There's a separate reason why that thing has moved from above average to a leader. And when that thing is green and green, the day that it went from, or the week that it went from green white to now it's green green, you now know that that thing has been in a leadership position for 4 weeks or more and is now absolutely, everybody knows that thing is leading the way. Well, that would have been nice to know on the way up. When that thing goes white green, I now know that what used to be a confirmed leader started lagging just enough so that instead of leading the breakout pack, it's at the trail end of the breakout pack. It might even be drifting back to the peloton, which is catching up. That's good to know. That's the source of kata 2. That is the source of preserve 70% of the gain, and let's see what happens next week. That's kind of all you need to know about how you monitor the racers in a long run. Like you're watching a marathon, and you can see that unfolding. You don't have to pick the winner. You got to be doing better mile to mile to mile to mile because you get to reposition your bets. That's how you do that. That's how you think about that. Anyway, always good to see you. All right, fellas, that was a pretty good. Are you kidding me? Nathan? I know you got a hard stop. So do I at 9 o'clock. Uh, that's what happens sometimes when time stops. Um, I know
That was that was fantastic. Yeah.
I know you have a specific question about. Yeah. By the way, what I just described was the opening. That's the opening remarks that I would give to doctoral students at the start of their 3-year effort. It turns out that one of my former officers who used to command the Army Logistics University as a full colonel and who used to run the National Training Center logistics trainers for a year and a half, who was my shop officer as a captain, is now back teaching. He retired and is now teaching in our college, and I'm his doctoral supervisor. And he's doing research on contested logistics at the doctoral level. And we're going to rewrite the entire Army's doctrine on how to do that. And that's going to get him promoted into a civilian general officer position if he wants it. We call that the special executive service. That's where you take civilians and give them the civilian equivalent rank of general officers and make them the long-term guides so that when general officers on active duty come and go, the senior executive service stays there as the long-term. So I'm posturing him, positioning him to be that guy if he wants to do it. He's got some health issues, but he was the supervisor of that gal who wrote the master's thesis that we wrote the AI model for, that we shipped to my two-star general. And just to close the loop, to show you how beautiful the world is, Lieutenant Haley Sunblom, who's going to the school that that guy runs, was a soccer player of mine when she was 18 years ago. And I taught her to play soccer for 15 years. And she joined the Army, and she's now attending that school and getting her master's degree in logistics from Florida Institute of Technology. And she came back at Easter to see her family, and she went over to the high school track to do some running and get her steps in, because she's going to have to run physical training with the commanding general at the school she's going to, who is my former student. And I was over there playing soccer with the little kids on Sunday and saw her, and we talked for about 20 minutes. And she says, "Do you know anything about AI?" I said, "Yes, I do." She says, "Can you send me some tribal wisdom about the things you learned in your 47 years of service?" I said, "Yes, I will." So I spent my time, and you heard that story before, Alex. I wrote the package of things with AI and tribal wisdom to send to her. And I told her, if you get a chance to run PT, run physical training with General Davis, be ready to talk to him about 5 things that you think are important. Because he's a guy that will listen and do something about it. And I BCC'd that letter to her, to General Davis, to alert him to go find her and run PT with her. And I sent him all of the background AI stuff that we've been working on so that he could use those 2 prompts that I described to tell his staff to use those prompts to give him better advice. And she sent me a note this week and said, "Hey, coach, you'll never believe what happened. I got to run PT with General Davis." And I said, "No kidding. How about that?" I said, "It's a good thing that we were prepared, wasn't it?" And she said, "Wait a minute. Did you?" I said, "Yes, I did." I said, "You better pay attention, Haley. That's the world is a, you may not be interested in the world, but the world is interested in you." So that was a really nice way for all of that stuff to come together. And somebody asked me, "Why am I teaching at that school?" That's exactly why I teach at that school, in a job that I essentially created for myself, to do the work that I want to do exactly as I want to do it. And if they get tired of me doing that, I've got fuck you money. You know, they'll tell me when they've had enough of me. But meanwhile, I'm working with the students the way I want to, and it's helpful. The reason I was able to talk to the Army Nursing Corps, by the way, 2 of my former students got reassigned to that college down there at Fort Sam Houston as executive fellows for research. And what they put together a 3-day professional development seminar for the nurses. And they called me up and said, "Hey, could we ask you to talk to the nurses for an hour about AI?" I said, "I'm happy to do it." So there's something really powerful about that network effect. If you put yourself out there in a safe and entrusted, truthful way, only good things happen. The bad things are easily managed because of risk management. We pay attention. So uh, I am I am genuinely grateful for you guys allowing me to tell that 90-minute story uh, at a time when I'm supposed to be coaching you on what you're doing. But it's
Yeah,
part of the
this is
package, I think, if you know what I mean. All right,
yeah.
Alex, over to you.
Yeah, I
Specific
was saying
questions on it.
it's both it's both very informational and uplifting. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, very very good. From my perspective, I don't can't speak for
Yeah.
anyone else, but from me, that's
Hey, I'm just doing my best. Hey, my heart out at 9 o'clock, by the way, is I'm going to go have breakfast with my daughter who's in med school, who's the one who told me to shut up and go talk to the doc. So I went to the doc this week. He did all the tests. My blood test, the labs were not just good. He said they were perfect. And I'd lost 15 pounds of water weight and fluid that had been accumulating. Blood pressure was 120 over 70. Pulse was 60. Everything was good. We're going to do a follow up ultrasound of the heart just to make sure.
Mhm.
But, I shut up and did as I was told. And the reason I was able to do that was I talked to my AI coach and I said, why am I being such an asshole with the feelings of my family who are trying to express their care, concern, and love for me because they're worried about my health because of the swelling in my lower legs? Why am I playing games with that? And I went through the process and, got my shit together. And what was persuasive was, what advice would you give to somebody 1 year younger than you? And they're doing the same thing that you did. What would you tell that person? I said, oh, yeah, shut up, listen to the doc, take your medicine, and quit fucking around with your family's love. You don't have to be the guy that they don't worry about. You've been that for 65 years. They can carry the weight. So what I want you to do is go find this song on YouTube. It's called The Weight, Weight. It's by the band from their farewell tour. They were the backup band for Bob Dylan. And the version they did live for their farewell tour was with the Staple Singers, who are the best soul musical group ever. And you listen to the voice of Mavis Staples and Pops Staples, her dad, singing with the band. And if you were not an optimist, you would become one. And you would be grateful that there's people that can carry the weight. And that's what that song is. I'm going to send you the video. I've been listening to that every day this whole week. It is just Mavis Staples. Holy, oh, that is the greatest voice I ever heard. And I love Aretha Franklin, and I love Bonnie Raitt, and I love Tom Waits and J.J. Cale, but Mavis Staples, holy smokes. Oh, anyway, go, Alex, go.
Yeah. No, I'm just I'd say I don't know if you should use that time to analyze
I
their
have not
we
had a
can
chance yet, but I will.
okay,
I will
got it.
try to get it done. I will try to give you the answer tonight
Okay.
during
Got
the
it.
but I will also record the answer and send it to the boys.
Okay.
So I'll take a look at that and
Okay. Great.
and
Okay.
and I gotta go. I want to go find the slide deck that I did
Mhm.
originally to
Okay.
to,
All
to
right.
describe.
Let me then start sharing.
Yeah,
Just a moment. I'll just share the screen. See. Okay. This showed up. So before we go here, um, so this is what I rebuilt with let's say the permission from their document that you sent me because
yeah,
some of their Excel queues they no longer
yeah. I think
function.
he updated. So he changed some of the structure
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
of his formulas, and I have to update that. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so now it can run through Google if you're interested in that way.
yeah. I
Um,
think that would be very helpful to everybody else too.
mhm.
Um, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll send that. Mhm.
All right. So let's see. Data in, entry cost, data out.
Okay. Um,
Yeah. So for the other two guys, what this does is it takes the start date and the end date of a trade and calls it the time T. So it counts how many, column M shows how many days that trade was open. It shows the entry price and the exit price. It now computes the 2T time frame. So the first line was the 18-day trade. So it looks at the from the start window to 36 days, and it says there was probably a reason to be interested in that trade, and then it lasted as long as it did. So I'm going to go to the twice the time frame and to see as the general neighborhood what happened to this thing before and after your exit to see if there's more value in the signal. It finds the highest high and the lowest low in the 2T time frame.
Hey, Ken, we can't hear you.
Yeah, for some reason, yeah, I lost. Yeah.
Wait a minute. What happened here? Testing?
Yeah,
Yep,
much
yep,
better.
We there?
yep.
Oh, okay, good. We try that again. All right. So you started on this date with an entry,
Hmm.
and then it went to here, and it exited there. So what you got was the result. It then this is the T time frame. It goes to 2T. It finds the highest high and the lowest low in the 2T time frame. It sets that equal to 0 to 100. It finds where you entered on that scale of 0 to 100 in the 2T time frame. Let's say I'm going to use the example historically of my 5DD. I found that I was entering at 54 on the index scale. And then it finds your exit. It also scales at on a 0 to 100. And I found that I was exiting at 62. And I found that my stop loss that should have been red. I found that my stop loss was at 44. So I was essentially risking 10 index points. My average win, that was a 62 to 54, was 8. And my expectancy for that system was 0.8. And my win rate was 63%. And my worst loss was 1R. That's everything you want in a system, right? A win rate that's positive expectancy of 0.8, and my average win to average loss was something like 3 to 2. You'll trade that forever. I traded that way for 5 years until I had this idea. And I discovered that about half the time, the highest high was in here. So that trade pattern looked like this. That's really bad for me because I was leaving for all of those trades where I saw the highest high. I was leaving 38 index points on the table. It had moved to the highest high, and by the time I exited, I was capturing 8 index points, but left 32 on the table. That's opportunity missed. Now, why did that happen? Well, I was waiting too long to exit. The other half of the time, the highest high was occurring in the 2T time frame. So what that meant was that I was doing this let me do this in a different color, the color of blue. I was doing this. I got to a certain height and then came back. But then that thing went up to here. Now, here's the other thing, the stop loss was really good because it was protecting against all of those, because this was long only. So the stop loss did what it was supposed to do. But guess what? I was leaving 44 index points after my exit. There was actually, from the moment of my entry, there was 54 index points available to the downside and only 46 index points available to the upside. I was trading in the wrong direction. And even though my stop loss was protecting me against the loss, I wasn't seeing that there was enormous value to the downside. So for every trade that was happening after the T time frame, that told me that I needed to look for a COTA 2 immediately following my exit, so that if this thing didn't fail further, I could re-enter here, or at least here on an emerging dragon. And so from that insight, the entire COTA 2 and stop and reverse idea was born. Because if I know that I'm going to gain this much, but only give back that much, if I can keep this at 70%, then I have 35% and 35% back to the moment of entry. And then if I have 44 index points, I might also have a second phase, so that if the first trade actually triggers its failure level, I can get this. So it helped me capture more of this. It helped me to be ready for more of that. It helped me see the downside of that. And it was over a large enough data set that sometimes this was a 18-day trade. Sometimes it was a 3-day trade. And I actually like the smaller duration trades, because I might get 6 3-day trades in the time that I get 1 18-day trades. So now that taught me, that said, even though I started off from here and this trade could go to there, it's still good enough to keep. There could be something happening here that's better than just hanging out with a thing that's moving along. This becomes dead money if it starts off better than the S&P. It starts off better than the S&P 500, but at some point the S&P is doing this. This thing is still going up, but it's now lagging compared to the broader market. So I need to watch for the ratio or the relationship between the market moving and my open trade moving. And I should try to prefer the things that give me rapid capture of the expected potential gain, and then being ready for the results to reverse the other way, in order to respect the fact that while the market does this, it does this on the way. And then I learned why rising lows matter, and then why the distance to the sell-off should be measured and compared to the distance on the upside. And out of that, the entire body of knowledge of RLCO, Z-scores, relative strength and momentum, all of that finds its seeds in the trade index analyzer, which is this frame of reference. 100%. And you know what that is? That is gold recovery. That is context, observation, insight, and next steps iterated. So as you're making a body of knowledge, you find these coins, you link them together, and you put them into the network of learning. And then what I described today for you for the first time was how to think about that body of knowledge that you've collected incrementally by putting lessons in there and comparing that to the deductive body of knowledge that with your head in the clouds, you collected the rainwater coming off of theory, and now you compare those two. And in the middle, this is induction, this is deduction. There's another word for this one. It begins with an A, and because I'm old and tired, I forget what it is. But what this does is a kind of reasoning, abductive reasoning, that's the one, that allows you to create a hypothesis that is informed by induction and deduction, test it with an experiment to prove or confirm the theory by living in the data. Abductive reasoning is how you rapidly scale and get better. Thank you. I knew there was a reason. So that's what I want to say about your work there, Alex. That what you're doing is correct. Let me see, highest high, lowest low. Scale that to the right, or extend that to the right. Can you drag your this way? All right, lowest low, date lowest low, entry index, exit index. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so that's the systematic process that you follow. Now, I believe that there is a way to do that on the intraday, but I am more open to simply, here's the way I think we do that. The way to do this intraday is simply to take the size of the range and you say the range percentage. Yeah, this is how we do it. Highest high, the low of the day. This was your open. So you need open, high, low, close. You still need entry and exit. And what you're going to end up seeing is that you have your index this way. Your opening index was here, your close index was there. Your entry was here. Whoops. That's how to do this. You don't have to do the 2T. Instead of the 2T time frame, God dang it, why did I take me this long to figure that out? God damn it. You now can measure that as your capture. And instead of 2T, you're just going to take the daily time. God damn. This is the same as the signal to noise ratio. So what I've been doing is computing the real body. That's your signal from open to close. And then the tail is the noise. And I didn't make the connection until just right now how to do this intraday. How much of the signal am I capturing? So that is signal efficiency index. How much of the available move did you see? Signal efficiency effectiveness index. So that's what we're going to do now. That's how you measure how much of the daily move you actually got. If you think about my daily report, I talk about the range percentage divided by the range stat. If that is 1.0, then from high to low was one pure range stat. If it was 2.0, then the size of the move was two range stats from high to low. So what I do is I rank the daily moves of all my items of interest by that number. So I can see what was in play today on a relative basis. And anything better than 1.0 was a greater than range stat day. And then that's in play. And then tomorrow, that's a good candidate. That's how I find really good candidates for tomorrow, is because today it had a massive move whether I got it or not. The next piece of research is compare the start condition of yesterday. If yesterday was abnormally small, if it was a range stat index of 0.3, super quiet, how often tomorrow was it greater than 1.0? Do the super quiet days lead to surprising explosive days? I bet you they do. So how do you do that? You go back and find all of the targets that were greater than 1.0, and then you go back D minus one, and you say, what was the characteristics of the yesterday's profile? You're going to find that the best movers today started off as the best movers yesterday or the worst movers yesterday. That the abnormal quiet and abnormal big lead to reliably big moves. That is so freaking important that that is now a thing. That is the secret sauce right there for intraday trading. What you just put together for the Google Sheet, Alex, is the secret sauce for the swing trading in order to study your own rules for the things that you are already trading, and you can tune the treatment of your specialized herd of individual symbols. But for day trading, I can now take a bag of popcorn, microwave popcorn ready to pop. I'll take 300 symbols and find the ones that are today abnormally big or abnormally small. Those are ready to pop tomorrow. Be ready for those. That's how good that is. Now, you can then take your actual results and compare that to the theoretical capture that was available. And then you can look at your system to determine what part of the curve am I capturing? What part am I missing? That's why we do the coaching eye and the replay, so you can see where you are and what you did. Put a big white box over top of that, and then see the trade as it unfolded. Notice what is triggering you. And then when your green dot is revealed, you say, oh, that's where my rule triggered. Where was I getting triggered beforehand? What did I notice? That gives you a way to tune your stalking and trust and validate the inner voice that is talking to you about that trade. You might even have your rules set so that when the rule fires, it goes yellow dot, yellow dot, yellow dot, green dot, and then you can track to see how well your setup criteria are giving you early warning about what is happening. That's a powerful idea. All right, keep going, Alex.
Thank you, Ken. It's a great insight. I wanted to ask you what I should let me just give me a second. What should I look for?
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
sorry.
what you do now is now what you're going to do is you're going to take all of those entry indexes,
Mm-hmm.
entry index and exit
Uh-huh.
indexes,
Uh-huh.
and you're going to build first of all, you build a composite graph that shows on average, this is my trade. If you have multiple patterns, you could draw, and this is what I did with all my swing trades and why I love the 5DD the most,
Mm-hmm.
because the 5DD says it had the best positive expectancy, but it also had simultaneously the best uncaptured value on both ends of the curve. So that's why it's my favorite system to start with. So what you do is you find this, and then you find the 2T, and then you start looking for these opportunities. Then if you did triple screen and channeling and overreaction, you can plot the pathway. This might be, I don't know, maybe that's the triple screen. And maybe this was channeling, and This was overreaction. It kind of looked like that when I did them all. So what you do is you can then break out by pattern which pattern is the best one to concentrate on. You might also then take a symbol and say, you know what? Let me find all of the trades for DIA and say, here's the DIA profile. Here's the Q's profile. Hey, get rid of the Q's or only take the short signals in the Q's and emphasize the long. So you can sort by symbol, by pattern. If you have a let's say an SSC and then kata twos, you can say, what's the SSC profile? What's the kata two profile? And maybe the SSC should just alert me to really concentrate on kata twos. And then just becomes a setup. And I'm going to use all my time and energy to effectively manage the kata twos. Why? Because the SSC is a single symbol signal, but kata twos, I might get 4 or 5 in one continuous trade. So that's what you should do with that data set in order to break it into the component systems and then the component symbols. And if you had, then you can start, because you have a large enough data set, you can start using that to refine which pattern you want to use and or combination of patterns and or which combination of signals and direction or season. If you wanted to expand this further, you could then go back and say, what was the market condition like that this was part of? And now you're expanding the analysis by adding the market condition variable. You don't have to, but you could, because you might see that when the market is in these different categories, you might find that this, and this were the best times to trade when the market was bull, sideways, and bear, volatile, normal, and quiet. You're going to find that those 4 corners, and the 5th one would be this one, because it's volatile and non-directional, you're going to find those 5 categories are the best times to swing trade. Why? Because you're getting abnormally sharp moves quickly. You're going to find that the BMR takes care of the slow rise when things are just normal, normal, and normal. The BMR is, market spends most of its time here. And this is when BMR gives you all its value. So you don't have to extra swing trade when it's here. But when the market is here, 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 and here in the 4 corners, you're going to get the best swing trade additive signals. Is that enough? Yeah. There's a
Oh
whole year's
yes.
worth of research in that.
Oh yes. Yeah. I think I'll go and I'll unpack this this information.
Now, guess what I'm going to send you tonight? I'm going to send you tonight the gold recovery system analysis of this transcript. And then we're going to see all of the things that I said we should follow up on. It's it's going to be pretty amazing.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Hey, quick over to Michael. I got about, sorry. I've left you 6 minutes before I have to start rolling.
Hi. I just quickly because as you mentioned on the our first session, Ken, you
Yeah.
just say just do what you do and basically we will see the result.
Yeah.
So I decided to start over basically, and what I'm doing every Sunday, I show you maybe just main points. Basically, I trying to find the movers, right? This is selecting these 10 symbols which
Yeah.
have a potential to make a move, right?
Yep. Yep.
So 1 second. So, there is some options now.
Yeah.
So I'm doing few things, right? So basically, I'm checking your weekly market report and choose, the symbols to correct. I'm not sure I can share it. One second.
Should be able to.
1 second.
I just noticed my background. There's the spirit badgers, two of them. Those are my spirit AIs doing the work. And then the upper right is my spirit owl, which is the wise guy Supreme Court double checker. That's the wisdom of my father with my big round head in the middle. That's from the Native American artisans in the New Mexico. Okay, got it.
Okay. So
Here we are.
basically, it's just a few things, right? So basically, goal is to select the symbols, find the targets, to find opportunities
Yeah,
and potential movers. Emerge to emerge 10 symbols for a week, not all correlated. Basically, choose from market sector, regions, symbols, stocks, bonds, natural resources, etc. Symbols will be rotated based on the current market conditions and symbol positions. Tools to be used to do this:
yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Ken's coaching
yeah,
session, wiki market
yeah.
fundamentals.
On the fundamentals,
Okay.
what I would say is there's fundamentals and then there's news. And some of the news is about fundamentals. I would prefer looking at the news rather than a deep dive into fundamentals because what moves the market short term will be news. The fundamental changes might inform the news, but really, if you look at earnings, that's the result of fundamentals, right? The earnings gives you the score. The fundamentals explains what changed about their process that produced the earnings. The earnings drives the news. The news moves short-term traders who move price up and down. So the more time you spend on fundamentals, you're way back in the cooking pot. You're back here in fundamentals, earnings, news, volatility. For me, the swing trading piece is here. This influences long-term price, and this is relative strength. BMR is designed to find the difference in price on long-term movements, which should come from fundamentals. So I've turned off fundamental analysis altogether. That's what Wall Street and analysts are doing to make recommendations for where they should change their asset allocation, which then reflects in price, which then makes BMR find the movers long term. So in the food chain, in the manufacturing chain of facts and fundamentals, I give them that battle. I'm looking for the so what effect on price. That's my personal opinion and practice. I'm not saying that you should do that,
Understand.
but as I look at the word fundamentals and some new, you're really looking at news. You're using the news as a way to bubble up all of this stuff that's cooking. And if it's newsworthy and it's watched by millions, that's what produces price volatility. Jim Cramer said something. Okay, it's going to move the market, not in the direction he says, but it's going to move the market like this. And then the people that love Cramer find all the times that it worked, and the people that hate Cramer find all the times it didn't work and try to make rules out of that. All I know is that when Cramer talks, those things jump, and my rules will help me find the right way to trade it. So that's what I want to say about that part of your process. Fair enough?
Yes. And
And then this
basically,
is what you're doing with the indicators is the so what. That becomes the how to measure and how to interpret. I like this. Yeah, yeah. So those are moving. I would add cat to the mix because of all the mainstream guys, that goddamn thing is just moving. And go back to your screen for a second.
Because
the chart.
yeah,
I want you to add the
yeah,
comparison to SPY. There's a way that what it'll do is I make that a red line, and it'll show over the same time period. It'll show what the S&P is doing, and maybe the S&P did that. And what it'll show is that all the time it was in this position, that thing was doing better than the S&P. It started converging, and then all this time it was underperforming. So on the longer term trades, that works better. You can look at the flow of performance of your system or the target versus the S&P, and then you can say, hey, it's on the rise and getting better. This is a value play. It has underperformed the S&P, but it's closing the gap. That's a good thing. That's early stages. Here it is now officially better, and now it's outperforming until the market gets better and this starts to decay. As soon as these start getting smaller, it's losing its relative strength compared to the S&P. And if you just put that little line to compare at an instant for a single thin red line or your colored line, you're going to be able to see something very important about the long-term context window that actually represents a market condition or a condition relative to the market condition. It's like the second derivative. Did I make that? Was I clear on that?
yes, that was clear.
All right.
And back to you again. So basically, I started with Rigetti,
Yeah.
and this is how,
Yeah.
it's one day.
This was the move.
Exactly.
You had lower lows until this one made a higher high on a 1 day spike, and now it's here. It could have failed here, and if it did, it was going to test that, but it did not. That is a really strong sign. And now we're going to test. This is tricky because it has to get above the previous resistance. But if this thing gets above here, this is an emerging dragon, and it is off to the races, at least to here. But if
That's
this,
why I'm thinking, because it's
yeah,
surprised me. Rigetti is really behind all over semiconductors. This
yeah,
is executed on 2 hours. I was in here, and my first target is here, and
yep,
next one basically is on the top. When I
yeah,
show you
this is free. That thing is free and clear. Everything above this
sorry,
is free and clear.
yeah,
But this little pullback to a measured level, and on the longer term, you can see the slope of the dragon here. It's made
sorry.
the nice turn. You have the P1. This
Sorry,
thing
Ken.
this thing holds. Yeah.
It was different chart here.
Oh,
Oh, here you go.
yeah. It's the
So,
same logic. Yeah. So
so
down, hold, down, breakthrough. Now it held, and now it's ready to go. So I'm looking for the top of the dragon target, top of the RL10 target. This is the true emerging dragon. So I can play from here to here. That's leg one. That is leg two. Everything above this is leg three. And those are all measured moves against a really small risk.
yeah,
So
exactly.
this is engineering. This is enthusiasm. And if it can break this line, that's even double, triple goodness. All right, I just got the light flash in my face. I am being paged. That should give us
Uh,
plenty of stuff to work on this week.
May may
Good.
may I
Finish up. Yeah, finish up. Go. Keep
may I
going.
show you something?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I was wondering, all over semiconductors, basically,
yeah.
uh, so
Chevron. Okay.
they are really high. All of them, basically, or most of them,
Yeah,
are on top. I was wondering why Rigetti is basically right here. Basically,
yeah.
it
Because
has so much
they
so
are
much
a
potential.
yeah they are a specialty solution provider for quantum computing. Quantum computing is a special form of computing. They have specialty chips an operating system which is good for quantum computing and only quantum computing. And quantum computing right now is only good for a very small category of problems concerning uh, encryption. Quantum computing right now works on reverse engineering of encryption. There's a bunch of other things we think it can work on, but it's not proven yet. So the value of Rigetti is as a leader in this solution. But if that doesn't get a wider data set, there is a limited market for their machines. And then there's other competitors for Rigetti's uh, special kind of chip. If these guys do better on encryption than Rigetti, they're it still costs them a lot more than they're making to develop their research. So this is extraordinarily speculative. The amount of potential value that they have, there's not people willing to put more against a optimistic scenario. So you're trying to pick the winner on a speculative research area. So they are a semiconductor, but they in the world of semiconductors, they are a small category of semiconductors. Whereas Nvidia has the GPUs that is huge, and Intel is competing, and AMD is competing. ASML makes the machines that make the semiconductors. So Rigetti receives some input from the semiconductor sector, but they are a really speculative play. They're so small that small amounts of money moves its price around a lot. There is a core set of owners in Rigetti for the long term who got their shares for free and are waiting to see this. And then there's a small cadre of people that are investing now that they've shown some success. And then there's the traders who are speculating in and out of this. And this is where all the volatility comes from. And these are the guys that buy it on every dip. Check or hold. So Rigetti is a great trader, but it's not an investment yet. And no overnight risk unless you have shares that were paid for 100%, not just the risk capital, but 100% of the position was paid for from profits of Rigetti trading. That's the only overnight risk that I have in Rigetti.
Okay, so every day in and out, basically.
Yeah. And I just wait and see. And if I can capture 30% of the daily move, man, I am happy. So I have a core position fully funded by Rigetti profits. I have a swing position at times funded by Rigetti profits. The risk capital is funded by Rigetti. And then I have day trade generating profits. Fair enough?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. All right, guys, I got to run.
Just a quick one.
Yeah, quick.
I sent you a note about it, but Ashi, I think, mentioned creating like some kind of a Discord chat, a group.
Yeah, he is. Talk to him. I think he's done it. He's doing an AI interpretation of the daily and the weekly report. So he's reading those two and then producing a summary of movers. You
It'd be
can take,
interesting to compare methods because I'm doing the same.
yeah, you can take his script. He's trying to find certain movers. So it's okay for us to have multiple scripts. By comparing that, we can find categories of movers and tailor your workspace to the kinds of movers you want, pick the best practices of scripts, and then make that the cognitive analytical report. Don't just give it the report and say, give me 5 movers. We are going through a process of tuning, and then we're making artifacts to produce reliable workflow. That's what we're trying to do. So talk with Ashay, and then we'll use the Discord channel for a clearinghouse, and we're going to make that password protected.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
work in progress. I absolutely got to run.
Cool.
Take
Take
good
care.
care, guys. And
Bye.
go look for that song. It's called The Wait. It's live by the band plus the staple singers. It's a 5-minute song that'll change your life for the better. And it's all my motivational energy in one. The Wait. All right. Got to run. Take care.
Cool.